Chris McKenna is the founder of Protect Young Eyes, fighting 24/7, 365 for the safety and protection of all children. Chris practices his internet safety tips on his four beautiful children. Oh, I like that. And is our warriors go to for all things digital and tech trends and take actions. Protect Young Eyes is at the forefront of fighting for children and families in Washington, D.C., and all around our great country. And I have to tell you, all with ease too. Chris makes it very simple for us to follow along and take action and learn every single day. So please follow Protect Young Eyes, the website, very simple to remember, protectyoungeyes.com, and be sure to sign up for their newsletter. It is full of information you need to know that changes almost, probably not almost, on a daily basis.
Right.
And you have to also go to Instagram, everybody, because I don't know, Chris, you're exploding on that Instagram. You have, I don't know, 140,000 or something like that, with great videos that are so infectious. When I watch them, they make me happy, you know. And I'm like, oh, this is making me so happy to learn about this horrible app. I'm just kidding, Chris, you know, something like that.
But I appreciate that. I need my kids to listen to this later to go, see, when I talk, other people get happy. You should be too, right? So there you go.
Oh, listen, they have to, because as we know, Chris, right? The kids are all going to Instagram, they go to YouTube and Snapchat. Those are a top three for most kids, teens, young people. And again, it's just infectious. So I want to say, Chris McKenna, welcome back to the Warriors.
Well, thank you, Lynn. Always a pleasure to join you.
Yeah, I appreciate you're always willing to jump on. I know you have a very busy schedule as you travel the country, sharing all of this knowledge with everybody, and you have a team as well that shares. Things are just sort of exploding with everything tech. But I want to first ask you a couple of questions about, we're a couple of months now into back to school, right?
We are.
What can you share with us about the phones? Because there's a movement, you know, phone free in the classrooms, in the schools. Also, if you've done any kind of focus groups with the kids, what they're saying, but kind of give us an overall. What's the landscape now that we're in early November? What's everybody doing?
Boy, 2024 has been a year of massive change when it comes to kids and devices and social media and all of that. There's a lot of things that you and I and others in this space have been saying for a long time, Lynn. And then we had the bomb of The Anxious Generation dropped by Jonathan Haidt, this fabulous book that takes a lot of these things, these ideas, whether it's delaying on social media or waiting on smartphones or getting phones out of schools. But the research is now here to bolster these things we've known in our hearts for a long time as parents and grandparents and educators, right? We've seen the impacts, but Dr. Haidt took the research and pulled that together. And now what we're seeing is movement, not just little pieces, but full movement and phone free, right? This idea that our young people focus best, learn best, and schools can achieve the educational outcomes that we expect without the constant pressure of notifications. It makes sense, and that's what we're seeing. And we have evidence of that, right? As you look at schools, not just here in the States, but internationally, who took to it even faster than we did, right? Whether it was France or, you know, Norway or other places that more on a, you know, national level, we're moving to remove personal electronic devices out of the education day, bell to bell, not just on them and off, but bell to bell away, because the research would show that even if it's within proximity, it's distracting me at a certain level and my grades are going to be 10% less or more than if I didn't have access to it at all, because this idea that I could be missing out on something is just a distraction, especially to a young, curious brain, which is more vulnerable to those kinds of distractions because of what's happening neurologically inside of our amazing young people. And so not only are we seeing more schools that came back in the fall with a phone-free policy, but we're seeing more and more of them moving that way, implementing various versions of phone-free, whether it's a full bag approach like the Yonder pouch or some other way of collecting them and separating them from the kids during the day. You know, a locker policy isn't quite as effective. You have to really be stringent on enforcement because kids find all kinds of creative ways to get to their locker during the day otherwise. So we're seeing schools doing that. We're seeing schools moving that way. But there's another part of this, Lynn, that I think we're just on the cusp of seeing another wave of change inside of schools. If you don't mind me just going one other direction here for a second, is that okay?
Of You're in charge. What do you mean?
Well,
You're king of the tech. I'm waiting with
no,
bated breath. What's happening? What did I miss? What's going on?
not missing anything, but it's not only phone-free schools, but it's low-tech classrooms,
Oh,
right?
yes.
What we did during the lockdown, and in some cases it was necessary, right? You're in New York, I'm in Michigan. We were locked down tight, right? And schools closed, quite a few of them, at least a lot of the public schools did. And so a lot of kids were home. And so we needed electronics to keep them connected to virtual school. So schools spent millions and millions of dollars in getting all these Chromebooks and other school issued devices into the hands of kids, right? And now we have millions and millions of kids with devices that actually don't help with learning. And we have all kinds of classrooms and, you know, uh, learning that's in place digitally that isn't actually encouraging learning, right? Kids are distracted. They're not getting the work done. They're not learning as fast.
Right.
And we know this to be true. So that is the next real battlefield here, is not just, yes, let's get personal electronic devices out of the hands of kids so they're not distracted by moms and dads or social media constantly pinging them all day. But let's get back to things that we know actually achieve educational outcomes, that are supported by learning research around tactile, around touch and feel, right? That no elementary school kids, and this is going to ruffle some feathers, no elementary school K through 5 needs any screens in learning. They're simply unnecessary, right? Are there ways that we can maybe take a kid and put them in a computer lab or whatever from time to time to interact a little bit? Yes. But in terms of regular learning environments, screens are unnecessary in elementary school. And we've just got to get back to some things that we know work instead of just buying the next gadget because that's what the cool schools do.
Now, Chris McKenna, you just opened up a can of worms because my mind's going crazy, even though I'm sitting very silently, because I just this past weekend was speaking with some teachers and here in New York. So there was a push by our governor, Kathy Hochul, by 2025 to have no phones in the classrooms. So I've been asking, well, what then is the protocol procedures? Because the teachers give the assignments and they want them to use the Chromebooks and their phones. Because if you lose your Chromebook in New York, like you don't get another one. So kids are doing the assignments on their phones, but there's no protocol in place. So I think we have to have, I don't know what to do about that, but that's like, you can't say no phones in the classrooms and then you're giving the assignments on the Chromebooks and kids are using phones. So I'm concerned about that. I'm just
Sure.
throwing that out there. Then the second thing is talking to other teachers that was in New York, in other states a couple of days ago. They were telling me, the kids adapt well. And this was grade school. Kids have these phones. The kids are adapting well, but it's the parents doing the pushback. I have to have constant contact with
It
my
is.
child. We've got things going on in schools now we didn't have when I went to school. I need to be in touch. And I know you mentioned this. I think it was just in your last newsletter. I think I read that as well. What do you have to say about that? Because why? I mean, I don't know. We don't have pay phones anymore. Like I used to put the nickel. I'm aging
Sure.
myself. Then it became a dime. That went up for me. It went to a dime. It did. It was a nickel when I started, Chris. But I guess that's just we have to keep talking about it and raising awareness and calm parents and caregivers down. How should we be talking to them about all of this?
Yeah, yeah. In some ways, I think, and this is what it said in my most recent communication with all our followers, is because I experienced this myself. I think I shared the story about how my 13-year-old son went for a bike ride, and we live kind of out in the country, but there's a path that gets you to our, from our rural community to the town that's close by. And I suspected that's the way he went, but he didn't take his kid safe. He has a Gab phone. He didn't take it with him for whatever reason. I had no idea specifically where he was, even though I kind of probably knew where he was.
Yeah.
And there was this moment of terror that I felt because I didn't have the precise GPS location of my child. And then it struck me, going back to some of those days of whether it cost a nickel or a dime or a quarter, right? None of our parents knew the precise GPS location of us. They knew generally where we were. But in that moment, Lynn, what really struck me was because of all of the technology, I've actually been conditioned to worry. It's as if I've been groomed to need to know precisely where my child is, even though knowing precisely where he is isn't going to stop him from getting kidnapped or isn't going to stop him from riding, or stopping at the speedway. I would know that then or something, but I feel like the technology has actually caused us to be anxious. And then we project that anxiety into how we parent in our children sometimes. And
Yes.
so I hear those parents, right? I would even say, I felt that for a moment there until I kind of realized what was going on. And then I created one of those Instagram reels that I'm sure you watched, right? But
Mm.
I think we ourselves need to train ourselves. And this doesn't come without some changes, right? If you're a school that's going to go phone free, then you better be a school that has systems of communication for parents and kids. When kids forget something at home, a uniform or a book, whatever, how do they get a hold of a parent? How does a parent drop that off? And how does the school communicate that to a kid? Those systems that we kind of all used to have back in the 80s, they need to be in place again in order to allow communication. But I think sometimes as parents, we've got to step back and go, wait a minute, how much of this is irrational, a bit irrational? And how much am I projecting? Am I transposing my irrational anxiety into my children and how I parent them? And those are just some big questions that I want us to ask as parents sometimes, and see if we can relate to some of that.
Yeah, it's almost like we're addicted to the devices. The kids are addicted. We are projecting onto them. Did you bring your phone? Did you? I was telling you, my kids are in their 30s, and I have to tell you, if I don't, we text back and forth every day, but I get nervous. Like if I don't hear from them one day, just one day, and I'm trying to say, wow, well, they're adults. It's like I
Right.
shouldn't be that nervous. But I think everything you're talking about is really what we have to be teaching the parents and grandparents too, and caregivers. I want to we have to talk, Chris, about this AI, this artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing a lot about it lately. What can you share with us? Because there is that story, and you did point it out in your most current communication newsletter I was reading. I was very concerned about this teenage boy in Florida
That's right.
where developing this relationship with this AI bot based on
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, and then harmed himself. I'll leave it at that. I mean, killed himself, which is
He
I
did.
can barely say that, Chris, when I have to say that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Um, so, what do you have to say about all of this? What happened there, and what should we be looking at
Yeah.
as the parents and adults with our kids? Because I really think we're not talking about it enough.
We aren't. We have a technology that is advancing in its abilities and scalability and its touch into the lives of our kids much faster than any of us can understand. And I'll say a word that I know sometimes makes people nervous. We don't have the right regulatory boundaries in place around it. I'm not advocating for a whole thick book of laws around things, but I do think when it comes to egregious harms that are frankly out of control, that
Mm.
in this case the genie's out of the bottle. I don't know, Lynn. We may look back on sort of a 12-month period. I'll call it from July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. Then we may look back and go, that was our window. That was our opportunity to bring something into control, to have it designed by a certain set of standards, to have certain fail safes in place so that it couldn't go egregiously this way or that way.
Yeah.
But if we don't take advantage and do some of those things now, we may never be able to, right? And that sounds very doomsday-ish, but um, we have lived in a time with technology for quite a while now. I would say since algorithms and machine learning sort of became a part of the equation here within the last decade, where those that are in charge of reining these things in are more and more not in tune with how these things work, right? It's not like other industries where you often had people in either side of Congress who were in that industry or understood it. Now we do have young junior members of Congress, I get that, but they're not the ones making decisions. They're not the ones who hold the power. And
Mm.
so we have more and more people who don't understand the issues. And I think as a result, and again, this may not be a popular thing to say, as a result, I think they're more easily swayed by other forces instead
Mhm.
of, if you really understood the gravity of what was going on, some of those other things that can be distracting to my decision making, whether it's lobbying or other things, I think you don't hear those as clearly because you really understand the gravity. The specific issue you're talking about is this young boy, Sewell was his name, Sewell, 14. He developed a deep relationship with this AI chatbot through a site called character.ai. And there's many of them out there where you can create these online personalities and create this digital person that then interacts with you. It'll send you text messages. Some of them will even call you, right? They'll do anything to make it feel as though you have this real relationship with a digital thing. You can give it certain voices. In this case, it was Game of Thrones, right? That he liked. And so it was a character from Game of Thrones. And
Yeah.
through the course of the
Mhm.
conversation, convinced to make a horrible choice. He died by suicide, and now mom is suing the company, and they're partially, Google's a part of the equation in some way, and this is what happened. Now, should there have been other monitoring and involvement and things that went on? Yes, yes, yes. But let's quit just shaming parents for digital things that they maybe should have done differently. And let's just prevent the technologies that also have a duty of care for children. All parts of society that is good and just have a duty of care for children, whether it's companies, whether it's churches, whether it's schools, policies, parents. Those are the
Right.
five I often talk about. They all have a duty of care. And in this case, the company failed in its duty of care for Sewell.
I mean, it's really one of the saddest stories. I'm going to use the word creepiest stories also, that children, isolating and developing these fake relationships. And this story, the parents noticed he was withdrawn and his grades were dropping, and they sought, help for him and all that. And still, so it seems like they did the right things. They were noticing what was going on, but still, it's a
Right.
tragic ending. I think you're very kind, Chris. This is my opinion. Money talks. That's
It
it.
does.
It's a horrible answer for everything. Everything I know I work on, the bottom line when somebody says, "Why is this happening?" We do a lot of work with law enforcement and all that, and the same answer I get all the time, because it's money.
It's money.
Money. If it's the fentanyl, it's money. It's the pink cocaine in New York now because it's money. Um, and how sad is that? These are our precious children, and I think you're correct. But you know what, Chris? There's a lot of awareness going on. Even in Washington, for instance, Kids Online Safety Act, right? Duty of care, you mentioned. Why
Yes,
is this so difficult? This to me is such a simple little thing that could make such a tremendous difference for everybody.
it
I'm
is.
sorry, Chris, I really just don't understand. It's bipartisan, you know, why we can't just have the Kids Online Safety Act. I don't get
Right?
it.
91 to 3 out of the Senate. When was the last time that happened on anything?
Like
Name a time.
never.
Never. I don't think that I've been alive for, even back to the nickel days on payphones.
Yeah.
Um, and so this is the question, right? Why has House leadership dug their heels in? They're listening to the wrong voices. They're listening, to voices that are overemphasizing
Mm.
certain what could go wrongs that are highly improbable, and not listening to the 90% of what could go right, related to this, right? I
Mhm.
used to be in risk management. I worked for Ernst & Young for 12 years, right? That was my job. And right, you were always identifying what could go wrongs and putting controls in place. But at the end of the day, you couldn't mitigate all risk in all places. To me, this is a no-brainer, like you said. The risks that are mitigated by this bill, especially because it's for our children, far outweigh any ways that it could be misused. And by the way, there will be courts, that will decide and come against those ways that are misused in order to hone it in and keep it in place. So they're listening to all the wrong voices. They're listening to the Googles and the Metas and the Net Choices and others, and they're not paying attention to constituents, and they're not paying attention to stories of parents who have lost children in ways that could have been prevented. And so here we are talking. People will listen to this on whatever day, but here you and I are talking right on election day, where a lot of things are going to be decided in different seats and in different places. So for those that may listen to this, we are far from done fighting for COSA. There's a lot that can still happen between now and the end of this Congress, this session, that sometimes things happen at the 12th hour, at midnight of the end, and we're going to keep fighting. I know you will, I will, to keep fighting to get this across the line, because we need something. We do. And it's not just that we're trying to get something horrible that is across the line. This is a good bill, right? 91-3. This is a good bill. And that version that the Senate passed is what we closely need to get through on the House to get something signed and into law. So,
well, I'm going to pray for it. I feel like we're going to wake up on that last day, Chris, and we're going to have good news. I'm just going to put that out into the universe, because, it is time. It is time to have some good news, a basic bill. Again, the simplest of things, right? For some protections and just, discussion. I don't know how anybody could look at the parents who've traveled to Washington, or perhaps your state capital. I know my state capital in Albany, wearing their children on t-shirts, holding up signs, and not say, okay, this is it. We have to start. We have to do something. So we'll be praying on that one. Yeah, we have to put that out there. We're going to pray on that one. Now, Chris, what should we be looking for right now? Is there anything, I'm sort of stuck on that you said there's a lot of those, and I know they're free too, that AI character that's been happening.
There are. Yeah.
And
yeah.
that, we're not hearing a lot about that. The first time I actually heard about that was when I read this story about this teen. And then I started doing a little research. What are some of the things we really have to be like looking at, researching, but basically so we know how to talk to the kids and give them a heads up?
Yeah, well, and that's where there's a curiosity angle to all of this, to inquire and to even just not assume that our kids all know what character AI is, but I'm guessing that they've seen mentions of it, because I think, as I mentioned, maybe in the video that I posted on Instagram a couple of weeks ago, because so many people were looking at this particular article in the Times about Sewell and can AI be blamed for a child's death, I think was the title.
Yeah.
What you had then was character AI, because they participate in paid advertising, right? In banner ads all over different websites, you were seeing ads for character AI, because what people search for, that's what tends to then show up through cookies and other things, right? We know how the internet works. It's creepy in how closely it follows us. And so my guess is there's quite a few kids that are at least aware of, they may not call it AI, but they're aware of chatbots. They're aware of avatars that can be crafted and made. And if they have social media, especially if they have Snapchat, because my 19, almost 20-year-old daughter, she actually complains about the fact that Snapchat has pinned their AI personality in Snapchat. You can't get rid of it. Like, it just sits there like creepily interacting if you want with it. She just ignores it. She wishes she could just, even as a user of Snapchat now as a young adult, she wishes she could toggle it off. So my guess is most of our children, even if you've said no, even if you're fairly involved in what they're doing online, they have some awareness of some of these things. And I just want us to have very curious, open face, all these sort of just kind of conversations with them during car time, meal time, bedtime, that shoulder to shoulder time. It's not sitting them down in a sort of a, inquiry face to face, because that just freaks out any young person, right? Especially our young boys who don't want to look you in the eye and have those serious conversations. And so whether it's AI, whether it's just interacting with content that makes them uncomfortable, right? Because I think, that's the other part of this too, is I think as parents, especially a number of the parents that you and I interact with, right? We all know porn is bad, and we do a pretty good job of keeping that out and maybe even having conversations about it. But there's this whole scale of mature that I think that kind of like a black mold that forms behind a wall that you discover 10 years later, or that pipe that's dripping behind your dishwasher that you discover years later that you didn't know was dripping. Like that's the TikTok effect on our kids. That's the seeing a constant stream of news that's shocking and just at a maturity level that they're not ready for. And
Right.
I think as good parents, we completely underestimate that. We've got the porn thing buttoned up, but there's this whole spectrum of content that way too many of our amazing kids are seeing, even on news sites, that they're simply not ready for. They don't have a neurological drawer to put that in
Mhm.
yet. Too much too soon, which I think elevates anxiety in our kiddos and
Yes.
elevates an unnatural curiosity
Mhm.
toward things that they're just simply not ready for. And so I want us to be involved. I want us to have all these conversations. And I want us to be careful of the non-porn problems that I think are also seeping into the content feeds of our kiddos that way too many parents are not paying attention to.
They're just slipping them in to the algorithms and things, right, Chris? I guess. But you know what? It is so overwhelming, right? If I can't keep up with it, well, frankly, I follow you, so I can, I take your stuff and use it because it's so excellent. You know, you're such a warrior with all of that, and I know it's such truth and facts all you do, and you know, wonderful for me. You've made my job so much easier, Chris. In talking about things or being aware of something. And I like that analogy of, you know, this dripping pipe, you know, dripping maybe for 10 years and then, right, this slow
Yeah.
drip. What, okay, so how can parents, I want to get everybody involved with Protect Young Eyes. Now, you do travel the country, you do
We do.
talks
Mhm.
at schools, places of worship, all of that.
Yep.
Um, how all so I'm gonna have everything in the body of this video so people can click on and they can read more because there's such a wealth of information on your website. Now I read you're redoing the website. Is this true?
Yeah, it is. So by
Why?
Thanksgiving,
It's so good already. What are you gonna do to it?
oh gosh, if you could see behind the wall, the black mold illustration,
The black mold.
you would see a lot of duct tape and gum holding things together. So we are
Okay.
from the bottom up. You won't even recognize it, but everything that you love about the information will still be there. It'll just be more. So we're excited for that.
I like that. It'll just be more because it's so good already, and I'm directing everybody to
Good.
go to
Thank
that
you.
website. Of course, after we're done and I load up the video and put everything in, tell us how the public can help you. You are always helping all of us. How can we help you?
Well, you talked about our following on social media. Our best marketers are CTO moms, the chief technology officer moms, the CTO grandmas and those that are out there. I really do need us in non-judgmental, just sort of curious conversational ways, saying these things in all the places where all of your friends are too, those that are going to watch this, right? And being okay having conversations about
Yeah.
technology with people on the sidelines and pointing them our direction. That's the best thing because it can feel judgmental to have these kinds of conversations with friends, but I think these are the conversations we need to be having. And so by those watching this saying, hey, I get this newsletter from this guy up in Michigan, or I found this website, I just so appreciate that. Send them our way. And if you think your school could benefit, whether it's public or private, whether it's Protestant or Catholic, or any flavor of that, we have different presentation versions for all of those, even different versions of scripture, whatever it takes. We have different, variations that really want to speak specifically. And if you think your community could benefit from a highly engaging, very practical, like step by step, we will give you the habits, we will give you the things to do before the weekend. That's what we do. We're often the ones that are brought in, say, after a presentation that just scared people, right? Maybe it was from somebody who just talked about the problems. Then we get the phone call, okay, now our parents need to know how to fix things.
Yeah.
And that's when we come in and we really want to do that. So if that's what you sense your community might need, please just come to protectyoungeyes.com, and Michelle, my amazing assistant, will do whatever we can to come and support you.
You know what, Chris? It's so, and I was too. I don't even know how long ago that was in New Jersey. I went to one of your presentations one
Good.
time
I remember vividly.
because I'm like, okay, that's an hour outside of the city. I'm going. To me, that was almost next door, and New Jersey, my home state. So I wanted to go and see you and just meet you and hear your presentation. But every community needs Protect Young Eyes because you pointed out, I'm just going to say it, this is my opinion, Chris. It's always presentations, PowerPoints, bad, 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 bad. Okay, I think we kind of all know the landscape, even parents to some degree, grandparents, which, by the way, I think is an untapped market.
I agree.
Grandmas, because they contact me a lot, grandmas, and they're like, how can I help? What can I do? I think that is an untapped army that we have to build up because they've got some time, a lot of them are watching the kids, because the moms and dads are working, things like that. So we got to get busy with the grandma and grandpa armies, I think. But anyway, I digress. But I just want to point out, you make it so easy, Chris, giving the presentation, giving the information. The Instagram is infectious. I'm telling you, it's enjoyable, which is tough. It's like enjoyable, but these issues we have to know about. And you know what, Chris, that's a gift. That's a gift because I'm saying this. I go to plenty of things and I sit there and say, they're boring. I'm sorry, Chris. This is me saying it. Okay, the information, repetitive, not you. You're wound up, you're ready to go. But the bottom line is you make it easy to digest, easy for all the overwhelmed parents, or caregivers, and you just give it to them and you give it to them happily. And so this is something I really want to work on helping you even build more, Chris. We need you in New York and more in New Jersey and Connecticut in
Mhm.
this area because there's nobody doing what you do. I'm not kidding. In this area, the way you do it. So I'm your biggest cheerleader. And Chris, give us some
Thank
final
you.
words. Give us some final words. What do you want to leave us with?
Yeah, well, you know me. I want parents to know that there is a hopeful way forward.
Yes.
That I believe that every parent with a combination of solutions, both technical and relational solutions, can decrease digital tension in the home. But I know that that can be complicated, and so if you need that one-on-one help, that's something that we've just recently put together is this private community for that. So I would just say don't struggle thinking there's no hope, that your child, no matter what mistake they've made, is beyond recovery, because
Mhm.
I have heard and been a part of so many situations. And I believe there's always hope. I believe there's always a chance for recovery if you have the right um, team around you, right? And the right advice, coming your way. And we want to try to come into those situations. So if anybody listening to that sort of feels sort of on that other side, that 49%, you're not quite to 50, but you're 49% feeling like something is possible, come our way and we'll do our best to get you over the line. And so to anybody there, I want to be your support. I want to be your help there. And we want to do whatever we can to create safer digital spaces for your family too. So
That's a great message, Chris. And you do give, I want everybody to understand, we talk about these issues, warriors, because this is the reality happening. We want you to be armed with the information to make you aware, be better, how to talk to your kids. But as Chris pointed out, there is so much hope out there. The fact we're even talking about it, right, Chris? We're like right now, you're far away from me, but we're able to get together and we're able to
right.
talk about these issues, share the information, and spread it across the world with the internet. So we're leveraging this internet for real goodness. And there's plenty of good things happening. We're going to keep on top of Kids Online Safety Act,
That's great. Yeah.
protectyoungeyes.com. Chris McKenna, I call you, we'll see if you like this title. How about like Digital Dad Warrior? Is that a good title?
I like it.
I,
The
I
the
kind of I kind of just
DDW.
thought of that now. I'm like
Okay, I
Digital
went with
Dad
it. Yeah.
Warrior,
Yeah,
the
there we go.
DDD. Yeah, I kind of like it, the DDD. Thank you. I'm going to say to you, thank you, thank you. I thank you a lot because I really mean it from the bottom of my heart, Chris. For being at the helm of safety on the internet, but also these digital trends that are popping up every second of the day. Um, I think, so much is going to happen for the good in 2025 because we are talking, we are
Mhm.
calling people out, we are demanding of our, representatives address this. We do have a lot of parents bravely coming forward,
Do.
who've been through horrible things that want to help other parents and people not have to deal with this. So I actually think there's so much positive news around all of this. And I'm going to thank you again for making my job as a warrior so much easier because of your great information that I can share with the public. Again, Chris, I will have all of your information in the body of this video, protectyoungeyes.com, also on Instagram. I want to thank you, and I'm going to leave you. Did you vote, Chris?
I
Did you
did.
go
I
up?
did last week. Last week,
I
I'm
had,
all
I had
good.
to, yeah, me too. I did it last week too, but I had to get that in there because, it's just what we're talking about today, at least here in New York
Absolutely.
City. I don't know about by you, but I really want to say, God bless you, Chris, and your beautiful family. And thank you for being such a warrior. Please let us speak again soon. Thanks, Chris.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lynn.